New report indicates that Iowa construction workers are losing out on more than $100 million per year.
Common Good Iowa says wage theft and illegal misclassification impacts about 12,000 workers. First Alert 6's Connor Hendricks joins us live now. Connor, what does the nonprofit say should be done?
Well, John and Jacqueline, there's actually more construction workers in Iowa than there are farmers. Now, Common Good Iowa estimates that about 10% of Iowa's construction workers are misclassified. That happens when someone does the work of an employee, but then they're classified and paid as an independent contractor. Now, people who are independent contractors may lose out on employment rights and benefits, and employers don't pay into things like workers' compensation insurance. Sean Finn with Common Good Iowa says that state and federal agencies together recover less than 0.1% of wages stolen from Iowa construction workers every year. He says state legislators should consider increasing funding for the Iowa Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing in the next session.
The state employs 4 investigators to oversee wage payment collection for a workforce of 1.6 million. That's not nearly enough.
Finn says the legislature should also reverse course on 2017 laws that limited local government's abilities to improve labor standards, such as adopting a minimum wage when seeking out bids for public projects. He also says the state needs to get these labor brokers to register with the state. Those are kind of the middlemen who connect contractors and workers together. He says that right now they're not paying into things like workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. Live at the Iowa Capitol Bureau, Connor Hendricks, First Alert 6.